People look at a rocket sitting on a launch pad and they think they understand what they are seeing. They see a big metal tube filled with fire and they think, well, you light the bottom and it goes up. Simple. And in one sense, that picture is not wrong. But what the picture completely misses is the staggering mountain of invisible support infrastructure holding that entire operation together. The thousands of engineers monitoring pressure readings, the insulated fuel lines pumping precisely chilled liquid oxygen at temperatures colder than the surface of Pluto, the rubber seals inspected by hand that very morning, the clean room conditions preventing a single grain of ordinary dust from contaminating the fuel valves. All of that vanishes the moment you ask the same question on Mars. So let me give you a picture that actually captures the mechanical reality. Imagine you are a racing driver, not on a track. You have driven this impossibly complex machine deep into the middle of a massive frozen desert. No roads, no pit crew, no radio signal, and now you need to get back home. But here is the part people forget entirely. The car you arrived in cannot take you back. The rules of the desert have already started destroying it. To leave, you do not restart an engine. You have to build an entirely new one from scratch, from the frozen sand sitting around your feet, with no tools and no replacement parts. And the fuel that engine needs, the moment you manage to produce even a small quantity of it, begins boiling away and drifting off into the freezing air before you can even capture it. That is not a story. That is thermodynamics. That is the actual situation a Mars crew faces. Now let us start pulling the layers off this problem one by one, because each layer is more brutal than the last. The first layer is cryogenic boil-off, and I want you to feel what that phrase actually means in physical terms. To lift a crude capsule off the Martian surface, you need enormous quantities of propellant. We are talking about liquid oxygen and liquid methane. These are not ordinary liquids. Liquid oxygen sits at roughly negative 183 degrees Celsius. Liquid methane sits at around negative 161 degrees Celsius. You have to keep them at those temperatures continuously or they simply stop being liquid. They turn back into gas and float away. Now here is the brutal part. Mars is not a cold storage facility. The surface temperature of Mars swings wildly, from roughly negative 125 degrees Celsius on a cold night to positive 20 degrees Celsius at the equator on a warm afternoon. Those metallic fuel tanks sitting on the surface are being heated constantly by that cycling environment. The insulation on any tank is not perfect. No insulation ever is. Heat leaks in continuously through the tank walls, through the support struts, through every physical connection, and that heat is absorbed by the liquid propellant inside. The liquid warms, and when a cryogenic liquid warms past its boiling point, it does not stay liquid. It converts to gas, and that gas pressure builds inside the sealed tank until the safety vents release it, and it bleeds away into the thin Martian atmosphere. This is not a problem you can simply solve by adding thicker insulation. You are talking about storing thousands of gallons of cryogenic fluid for somewhere between 14 and 26 months while you wait for the planetary geometry to allow a return window. The orbital mechanics of Earth and Mars are not negotiable. They align on a cycle of roughly 2 years. You cannot leave whenever you want. You are locked on that surface waiting. And the entire time you wait, the foundational laws of thermodynamics are very quietly draining your fuel tanks. By the time the alignment window opens, the mathematics of heat transfer have already answered your question about returning home, and the answer the physics gives you is that your tanks are empty. Now let us move to the second layer, because this one is even more intimate in its destructiveness. It operates not on your fuel supply, but on the very mechanical heart of the rocket engine itself. Mars has dust. Not ordinary dust. Martian dust particles are incredibly fine, and they carry a strong electrostatic charge from constant exposure to ultraviolet radiation and the thin ionized atmosphere. These particles do not simply settle on surfaces the way terrestrial dust does. They cling. They work their way into mechanical gaps that are measured in fractions of a millimeter. They coat optical sensors. They infiltrate rubber gaskets. They pack themselves into the microscopic channels inside fuel injection valves. A liquid rocket engine is one of the most mechanically demanding objects human engineering has ever produced. The turbopumps inside a large rocket engine spin at tens of thousands of rotations per minute. The fuel valves open and close in fractions of a second, and must seal with absolute precision to prevent a hypergolic or cryogenic propellant from leaking into a combustion zone at the wrong moment. The pressurized seals throughout the fuel delivery system are holding back propellants at hundreds of atmospheres of pressure. Now introduce a single grain of abrasive Martian dust into that environment. One grain sitting in the wrong place inside a high-pressure oxygen valve does not cause a small problem. Liquid oxygen at high pressure contacting a contaminated valve creates an entirely different kind of chemistry. A spark, a seal failure, a rupture. The physical consequence of a single microscopic particle in the wrong mechanical location at the moment of engine ignition is not a delayed launch. It is a violent and total destruction of the vehicle on the launch pad. And here is the deeply uncomfortable engineering reality. You cannot fully clean a rocket engine that has been sitting in an open Martian environment for over a year. The dust infiltration happens continuously throughout the landing period. Every Martian wind event drives fresh particles deeper into the mechanical structure. Every thermal cycle causes the metallic components to expand and contract, physically working those particles further into seals and gaps. By the time you are preparing to launch, the engine internals have been continuously contaminated for hundreds of days by one of the most persistent and electrically active dusts in the solar system. The third layer is perhaps the most philosophically sobering, because it strikes at the most creative proposed solution to the fuel problem. Engineers know you cannot practically bring all your return fuel from Earth. The mass penalty is staggering. The rocket equation, that beautifully unforgiving piece of mathematics developed by Tsiolkovsky, tells you precisely how viciously mass punishes you in spaceflight. Every kilogram of payload requires an exponentially larger quantity of propellant to accelerate it. Bringing enough liquid oxygen and liquid methane from Earth to fuel a Mars ascent vehicle would require a cargo ship so large it is essentially impractical with any near-term rocket technology. So the proposed solution is local manufacturing. You land a chemical production plant on Mars ahead of the human crew. You run the Sabatier reaction and electrolysis processes using solar power to pull carbon dioxide from the Martian atmosphere and combine it with hydrogen you brought from Earth to manufacture methane and liquid oxygen directly on the surface. The physics of the chemistry works. The molecular reactions are real and reproducible. In a controlled laboratory on Earth, this process functions reliably. But Mars is not a controlled laboratory. The Martian environment does something to complex precision machinery that no laboratory test can perfectly replicate. The combination of fine, abrasive dust infiltrating every moving part, the thermal cycling, cracking seals and gaskets, the near vacuum outside the pressurized system constantly trying to find and exploit every microscopic leak point, and the total absence of any maintenance supply chain creates a mechanical degradation rate that no long-duration robotic chemical factory has ever survived without intervention. If the methane compressor bearing seizes after 8 months, you do not order a replacement. There is no warehouse on Mars. There is no resupply ship on a 3-day delivery schedule. The chemical condenser that develops a hairline fracture from thermal stress is not a component you can fabricate from Martian regolith. The precision tolerances required to maintain pressure differentials in a continuous chemical manufacturing system cannot be reproduced with hand tools and local materials. The cold of Mars physically degrades polymer seals at rates far exceeding normal wear curves. The dust clogs heat exchangers, reducing thermal efficiency until the system overheats. Each mechanical failure cascades. A failed separator does not just reduce fuel output, it often contaminates the downstream products, fouling the very fuel that would have powered the ascent vehicle. You are not simply running low on propellant. You are producing contaminated, unusable propellant, while your manufacturing system slowly destroys itself from the inside. And this brings us to the deepest layer of all, the one that sits beneath all the engineering and chemistry and thermodynamics. It is a layer about scale and support. On Earth, every rocket launch is the visible tip of an enormous invisible pyramid. Beneath every launch you see on a screen, there are thousands of engineers, millions of precision-machined components, decades of accumulated institutional knowledge, clean rooms, test facilities, specialized tooling that costs hundreds of millions of dollars to manufacture. There are failure analysis teams that spend months examining components that barely showed stress. There are redundant systems and redundant redundancies and emergency procedures written for failure modes that have never actually occurred but might. None of that pyramid exists on Mars. A crew sitting on the Martian surface trying to return home is a small number of human beings with the tools they brought. Operating machinery that has been degrading for over a year in one of the most mechanically hostile environments in the solar system, with a single fixed launch window they cannot miss, and no possibility of external assistance of any kind. The foundational laws of thermodynamics do not make exceptions for human ambition. The law of entropy is not a guideline. It is not a suggestion that applies only when convenient. It is the physical universe enforcing the direction in which energy and order flow. Complex ordered systems left in harsh environments without continuous maintenance and energy input become less ordered over time. They degrade, they fail. The Martian environment is a maximally efficient entropy accelerator. It applies thermal stress, abrasive contamination, radiation damage, and vacuum-driven outgassing continuously and simultaneously to every mechanical system on the surface. The reason you cannot simply return from Mars is not ultimately a question of willpower or funding or even engineering ingenuity. It is that the mechanical infrastructure required to leave a planetary gravity well is the most demanding and precisely ordered operation that human civilization currently performs. And the conditions on Mars guarantee with the same certainty as any physical law that the machinery required to perform that operation will be in a state of advanced mechanical failure by the time you need it most. The desert keeps your car, the thermodynamics keeps your fuel, the dust keeps your engine, and the distance keeps everything else.